One of the duties of the first officer of the Klingon vessel is to assassinate the captain. Wesley Crusher thinks all Benzites look the same, and Riker says, look at me. Look at me. I am the captain now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 2, Episode 8, A Matter of Honor, story by Wanda M. Haight and Gregory Amos, and Burton Armis, teleplay by Burton Armis, directed by Rob Bowman. This was February 4th, 1989. Where were you? We have a very, very special guest. We are honored to be joined once again by Mr. You know who it is. It's Michael Westmore.
The legend.
Yay!
The man who brings his own applause.
Yeah.
I love it. So happy to see you once again. We're truly honored to have you. Everybody, this is somebody's favorite episode ever. And it is sponsored by that man. It is Justin Weir. Justin Weir, thank you very much for sponsoring this episode. This one is for you. How you guys doing today?
Great.
I'm great.
Doing great. This episode was great too, actually. And I remember, I think Justin was saying, "I can't wait till you get to this episode."
Yep.
So I'm happy that we're finally here because it was a great episode. There was a lot going on, and one of the better episodes I think of this series because it was entertaining and from kind of beginning to end for me. And Michael, you had a lot to do with that. I look like you had a lot on your hands because every time I see a multitude of Klingons, I think, oh, that's a lot of makeup going on.
And Ferengi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're doing like all of this makeup and you have so many different people, how much of it is about delegating and kind of balancing time, with 4 or 5 Klingons in an episode?
No, we had one of them where there were 25. But I had a great Jill Rockow, who was a great friend and a makeup artist. And I could literally go to Jill and say, Jill, go and get all the Klingon makeup, which ranged from a color called Malibu tan to very dark brown. And I'd say, get the glue, get this, get that, you know what you need to get. And son of a gun, Jill would get on that, or somebody else, might fool around for a while. And Jill would have it literally all set up. So I had great people working for me over the 18 years. It was a pleasure to work with them. And and not only that, but they could turn out the work to where I've even had recent comments from one of the shows that's airing now, and the new one, and a number of people have written in saying that this is as close as it really came to the real Next Generation, and it was responsible for the great work of making the show look, from then, and them reprising it now with the makeup following, which I was always afraid of, and it did happen. This is as close as they came to redoing Next Gen.
Was that Star Trek Picard, probably, right?
No.
Strange New Worlds. Discovery. Yes. Okay, Strange New Worlds.
Because my thing, when I first got there, and I had my meetings with Gene Roddenberry and Berman and everybody, that I became close with Gene. Nice, sweet man. I also was Magel's personal makeup artist through all the years, and saw Roddenberry grow up from a little kid. And I would have to listen to Majel all the time going, Rod, guess what he's done now? And Rod has turned out to be such a wonderful gentleman over the years.
Yeah.
And it's, but Gene told me what he wanted, and I followed that. or if I came up with an idea, I would go to Gene and say, this is what I want to do. Originally they wanted Michael Dorn to shave his head and just glue the spine across the top of his head. And I said, you don't want to do that to Mike. We can't do that. I said, I'll make up a forehead. And then it didn't quite look right with just a forehead. So then we did the teeth and the nose. And that became our signature for those 18 years. And that was what the compliment was from these people on this new show, is that they kept the same spirit of Gene Roddenberry alive. It wasn't like going off and trying to make a new wheel or something, which I was happy to see.
You brought up a point that I wanted to just kind of get a little elaboration on. You mentioned the forehead and the shaving of the head. And my question is, how much collaboration is done between the hair department when you're doing the kinds of wigs that you have, like for these Klingons, and then the makeup? And, do you go to one first, do the other first? Do you fit around the hair, or does the hair fit around the makeup? Like, what is the process with that?
Well, exactly what you said. They come in and they get made up first. Usually they come in for not a test, but they come in for a wardrobe fitting and things. At that time, we would select the color of the wig and the style of the wig. So when the time came for that actor to work, it was all set up. We knew what color makeup was going to be. And it always was a tan color to a very dark color, depending on the person's own skin tone. So we wouldn't have to do a lot of hatching or mixing of colors and things. So, but we had it down to probably half a dozen different shades of Klingon makeup. And we made all that makeup up ourselves. In the very beginning, it was a max factor rubber grease. But then we found that we could mix our own with acrylic colors from the art store and a water-based glue and mix this all up. And so we finally had formulas made up, how many drops of this and drops of that made up of the color. So like the day that we were doing 25 Klingons, it worked like clockwork, because we knew exactly everything we were going to do, we did.
Yeah, but you must have had to hire like a bunch of extra hands for that week or something like
that. We figured 2 Klingons per person. So that means they did one early in the morning. 12 makeup artists come in. We do one early in the morning, and then as soon as they finish that one, they would start on their second one.
Well, now, specifically about this episode, Michael, you did get an Emmy nomination for this, which is incredible in its own right. It may have been for the several amazing-looking Klingons, but I submit it probably had a lot to do with, of course, Ensign Mendon, who was the second Benzite, played again by the same actor, John Putch, good friend of the show. We love that guy, amazing man. As we mentioned before we hit record, there don't seem to be any bad angles to shoot this Benzite. It's 360 degrees of very good makeup, which is probably why you got the Emmy nomination. Can you speak a little bit on that? And were there any improvements made from the first Benzite to the second, or did you just
how many years later?
It was just the next season. It was just the next season.
No, I don't think anything changed at all. In starting off with it, because I had no rules to go by. I never had any rules to go by my 18 years. The writers never wrote anything in a script that said this is what they're supposed to look like. Let me know what planet it's coming from, and thank you very much, goodbye. And they left it up to me to figure out. And with the Benzite, this was actually the first, I want to say, major alien that we came up with, and it's a full head, and the pieces on it went. It had a different upper lip, and it had different eyelids and opposable thumbs. And the whole thing was just literally coming out of my mind, and doing it. When I'm saying the full head, you can see the picture on the full head, and the eyes look a little puffy. When in the old days, before they had many Chinese or Asian actors, we made Chinese eyelids, and so that's what I made for Mordock. And the same pieces, all the same pieces, were used on any Benzite that would ever appear in the show. But it was all made personally on John, and the lids could literally flap up right here. They're puffy, and you in sculpting it, you reversed it, and you cut out little Venetian blind type of things. So when he opened his eyes, the eyelids would literally fold into themselves. And then there was a separate upper lip that had little, I kind of had a fishy look going in it. This is like little catfish feelers.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Was that designed to like help him with the breathing, or was there any breathing done with that?
That's just part of the character that came out of it.
Yeah.
And then we don't have a profile on it, but right behind the ear here, there's other little things that come out from the backs of the earlobes. And at this time, it was very hot, and I didn't have a lab then. So I sculpted this at home in the kitchen when we were living in Studio City. And if you can see the little protuberances in the back, Mackenzie that time, I don't remember how old she was, but she was young. And I had some clay sitting on the table there, and she kind of picked it up and rolled it and stuck it on the back.
Really?
Yeah. And so that's what
she had a little job.
Yeah. And I looked at it and I said, do I take that off? Because right away it's like, oh, don't touch it. Wait a minute. That looks kind of neat. Because we had this going with the catfish feelers, and they you can see where they are right up in here.
Right behind
are they on the doll?
Yeah, no, I don't know. Just showing off that I still got this guy. Everybody just listening in, I just pulled up my Mordock action figure. Our friend Darth Shui will remind you it's not a doll, it's an action figure, but it's kind of a doll though. Anyway, okay. Please continue.
So with Mackenzie, take a look at it, and I thought, hey, that's not bad. It's kind of an accent as opposed to just being a round head in the back there. And so we left it. And that became all part of Mackenzie's contribution to the Mordock look.
Mm-hmm. And as you can see, those tendrils or whatever they might be are a little bit longer on this female Benzite from Deep Space Nine.
Uh-huh.
Right here. Anyway.
There's also a little throat piece here that I don't think we had on Putch. That would have been an addition to saying, what can we do to make it a little better?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the colors, and we were using, again, rubber grease and things, because PAX, which is that adhesive colorants that we eventually used the rest of the time once we started using that. The basic color was blue, and I used orange and yellow as highlights. And then there's also some little freckles in there. This is all the things that, instead of just painting them all blue, you do something to break it up and give it character. And so that's what I did for it. Now, with this particular thing, when we first started, I designed it, I sculpted it, I made the molds on it, I painted it, and I glued them in. So it was like, did it from the beginning to end. I didn't have enough help then. And the other person I had as help had to stay on the set and watch the set while I did this work. It's very interesting. that there's a book called Artifacts and Aliens, Star Trek
So
Artifacts.
that's applied with airbrush, Michael,
No,
or is that with a
no,
paintbrush?
didn't have airbrushes yet. Airbrush didn't come in until the beginning of the Borg. So I did all this with sponges and brushes to soften it out as it went. Um, it, uh, it was the way it was done at that time until the next step came in, which was um, I I took a class. There were like four of us that took an airbrush class, and this guy came over to Paramount in our lab, and he showed us how to all the tricks of using the airbrush. You know, pulling the lever on it and being able to highlight and shadow. This would have been great. This would have been a great makeup to have had an airbrush on. It would have gone faster. And the reason for the airbrushes for the Borgs is because when we first did them, they needed shading. They had to go around the eyes. We did the temples, we did the cheeks, we did these things. And I could give, and this actually happened, where we were doing about 10 of them or so, and every one of them looked different. And the reason being, somebody that had a very soft touch, they looked all white with just a little bit of gray in them. Somebody that had a heavy touch would turn their white Borg makeup into a muddy mess on the face. And when that happened, we had to touch them up and do things to them. So I decided to with the airbrush, and I was able to. Everybody would put their Borg together and put the light base on, which was a base. It was called Shibui, which it wasn't pure white. It was an off white. But I could take the airbrush then when somebody finished them, sent them to me, and I could spray the eyes, spray in less than a minute. So I was able to turn all 12 of those people out in less than 12 minutes. So we used an airbrush from that time on.
Wow.
Yeah. But the more
Uh,
you know, as I was saying, he had rubber eyelids that folded in when he opened up, had the upper lip here, just so he didn't look like a human lip talking.
right.
And then he had opposing thumbs. Uh, there was a point in the show, in the first one, where he was working on a computer base or something. And what I did is I took, say, taking one hand, and that's the hand, then sculpting on the little finger an opposable thumb,
Yeah.
copying John's this thumb, and it would slip on. And that's what we did on both hands.
So it
On
was
the
like thumbs on either end of the hand and
on
three
both
fingers in
sides.
the middle.
The thing
Yeah.
was when he was going with it, he could work with it, and it slipped on just like a glove. You know,
Wow.
I had kind of forgotten about that until um, I looked in my book and I read what I had said many years ago.
And in today's
And
episode, he actually used it. I saw him not trying to avoid using it because it's a prosthetic. He actually went and hit a button with it, I noticed.
well,
So
he was really glued in well. But now this was spirit gum, and which was a pain in the butt to put a woman together using spirit gum. We eventually changed to a silicone adhesive, which I have to tell you, when Star Trek finished, I gave my son Michael about 3 gallons of this stuff was left over. It was very expensive, and he took it and reformulated it, and now he sells it all over the world. But it it stuck even with it being spirit gum. The only big problem is it was a real pain to take it off an actor with a spirit gum because you had to take like acetone and alcohol and very carefully take it off. And at that time, when it came off, it was a throwaway piece. When we finally went to silicone adhesive, we were able to use pieces over and over again, especially like for the Ferengi and the Klingon.
Yeah, that brought up my next question, which was about removal. Because I used to watch some of the, just the whole process of removing and then cleaning the face after the actor was completely removed, and they go through the whole. I
Right.
remember seeing stuff like Cetaphil and other kinds of cleansers that were being used, but What were some of the tools that you would use? Was that done with brushwork? Was that done with like wooden?
You mean to remove it?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
removing of the yeah.
yeah. You'd find a little hole somewhere, and you'd get your brush in there, and you'd have to go here, and you get it down, and then you slowly, very slowly, it would peel away, and you just keep brushing, and
A
then getting
long
the nose
process.
off, and then getting out, working behind the cheeks. So cleanup was also uh, extensive. It could be all the way from a small Bajoran nose to some full face thing uh, like John Putch.
Very
Yeah,
quickly,
and
just to add to that, sorry, but I just want to when I've had it done to my face quite a few times, and in my experience, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, the most sensitive area was right on the eyelids and under the eye, where people would have to be really careful about pulling because the skin is so thin. Were there particular problem areas, including that or besides that, that you would always have to be super careful around when removing the makeup?
No, mainly the eyes. Everything else is really,
Mhm.
you can take it apart pretty quick.
Okay.
yeah, that answers my question as well. But also, back to the Klingon. So this wasn't the biggest kind of Klingon. You mentioned 25, but I did notice the variety of colors in the Klingons' makeup, because there were different, obviously, shades of people.
Yeah.
Particularly the woman who was like a darker looking Klingon woman that was being looked at by Riker at some point in this episode. And so you did address one of the things that I thought while watching this episode was that the actors who play Klingons have a variety of skin tone color,
Right.
and so you would have to variate when you're dealing with that, right?
But you normally, like with Caucasians, it was Malibu tan because it gave them a tan, but you wouldn't want to put a really dark base on them because of their hands and around the neck and everything. But uh, if somebody had like an ebony skin tone, very dark, we had a base to match that just to solve the problem of not having to make them all up. So it wasn't anybody that could come in that we couldn't match something up to go with their skin tone.
Did you, because you said you had a base for, you said you had maybe 12 different base colors. Obviously, skin tones are never going to match exactly. Was there a basic rule of thumb to where you would either go slightly darker and blend that in with the makeup, or slightly lighter and then blend that in with the makeup? Or was there just kind of whatever's
It was
closest?
always darker.
Okay.
Yeah, even Malibu tan was like somebody that's
Got
Malibu, actually has a tan.
Mhm.
Where if somebody had very pale skin, we couldn't put a darker base on. That would be terrible to do. There's too many little areas to cover up, and but as a skin tone got darker, we could. We tried to match as close to save us time, and because the next day they're going to work and probably clean them up the night before, so it worked out. It was a system we had to. In fact, all of Star Trek was a system that we had to work with to make it work, whether it be color tones or an appliance that's too big or too small. We had ways of taking and pulling a larger appliance in to make it a little smaller, or to let it out. We would maybe cut uh, up the back of the head and then have a very thin patch of rubber and could glue that over the top of it and blend it in to expand the head. So there was always tricks to make it work.
Mhm.
I
Now,
have,
Michael,
I have a. Oh yeah, I know. I have so many questions, but I
yeah,
can sit here and ask you 1,000 questions. But my last question is about contact lenses that change the eyes to different looks, and I wondered what was the system or process for
Color lenses?
deciding when. for deciding when to use them and not, because I see a
Right.
lot of the aliens don't have them, but then sometimes you do use them. And what was the impetus to bring in those lenses when you thought they were necessary?
Well, usually we'd bring lenses in when a character was changing, that maybe had some type of um, lizard quality or something. Another lens I had had double pupils in it, or if you wanted to have red or whatever. What I would do is I would paint up what what I thought I would like to have in the character, something that would lend to the character and actually give you a little bit of feel of whatever I was thinking of that it had, whether it was a bird or a microbe or whatever. Um, and then we would send them over to an optical company that would take the actor and make measurements on their eyes. And there was a special person that painted those eyes, and they were fantastic. And they happened to work for the optical lab that we sent them to, and they would literally paint them up, and those contact lenses fit those people absolutely perfect, as if they were going in to have normal contacts made. And then the day they worked, we would always have a lab technician come to Brent, and he put these in every day. Usually he would put them in before I would do his hands, his yellow contact lenses. And once in a while, he would, even though they're supposedly were all the same, he would have trouble where his real eyes would be a little red or pink at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But and that's why with Brent we did with yellow lenses with him, because it really went good with the gold fleck that was in his makeup. And so it worked. Oh, and I was telling you, a technician would come in and put lenses in. So aside from Brent and Marina with their betazoid lenses,
Yeah.
that a technician was putting them in and taking them out. And these lenses we were using were very soft, very pliable, and they would breathe. Prior to Star Trek, when I was doing like Masters of the Universe, they were made out of like glass, and you could only leave them in for 20 seconds or 20 minutes, because the lens would cover the eye, and there was no way for oxygen to get to it. And a person's eyes would start turning, the whites of the eyes would start turning blue if you didn't take them out the longest 30 minutes. And the longer you left them past the 20 minutes, the longer you had to leave them out for them to repair themselves before you could put them back in again.
Wow.
But that's the way it was done almost up until the time Star Trek started.
Well, Michael, this has been so much fun, as always. I feel like Cirroc and I each have 14 more questions to ask you, but we'll have to save those for the next time. We appreciate you so much. We appreciate you taking the time to join us, and all of the work that you've put in to Star Trek, as well as the work you put in beforehand, like Masters of the Universe, with, I believe, a Star Trek alum, Robert Duncan McNeil.
Yeah,
in that movie.
That's where I met
correctly.
Robbie. Yeah,
that's so cool. And all of your work since then. But Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm glad I was pull it off today.
Barely. All right, everybody. Stick around. Very special thanks to Michael Westmore and his many, many, many Emmy nominations and wins. This is one of the nominations today. We will be right back with more good stuff on The Seventh Rule. Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc frickin' Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Here are the trivioids of the week. We're still basking in the afterglow of Michael Westmore, but we'll try to get through this. The Enterprise visits Starbase 179. Wesley Crusher thinks all benzites look the same. Riker and Picard do target practice together. One of the duties of the first officer of the Klingon vessel is to assassinate the captain. Riker eats Pypia's claw, heart of Targ, and Gach. Commander Riker calls Gach Gog, though. Worf gives Riker an emergency transponder. Worf wants to instruct Ensign Mendon in Enterprise etiquette. Captain Kargan's father was killed in battle at Trinome Sar. Riker says, look at me. Look at me. I am the captain now. Actually, I think he said, I am your captain now, but whatever.
Yeah, I'm your captain now.
Yeah, but I changed it. So, hey, I changed it for a joke. Whatever. And again, special thanks to Justin Weir for sponsoring this episode. He says it's his favorite Next Generation episode ever. Hopefully we'll see him in the free-for-all next so that he can explain himself. Anyway, we got some O'Brien today, right, Cirroc? Every time I see O'Brien, I get excited. I'm happy. Of course, some scenes he doesn't even have a line, but still, it's nice to see him every time.
Yeah, he got a line. He got some interaction with Riker. Riker says, "Thanks, O'Brien," and then O'Brien goes on to tell him basically, "I'd be scared if I were you," something to that effect.
Yep.
And I'm like, here we go, O'Brien. Love to see O'Brien.
It's great. It's just great to have a secondary character have something, have a specific character trait and a type and who he is. I just love it seeing it, But what were you saying?
I think I heard him being referred to as Chief, so I'm not mistaken. If I think he was called the Chief at some point. So
Transporter Chief.
Yeah. So that was cool. Like the callback of the Benzite and Wesley, kind of when they run into each other, and he thinks it's the guy that he saw when he took those tests. I like that callback on the storyline just for continuity. It brings me back to the first season. It brings me back to Wesley's storyline, getting some more development, just a little bit of acknowledgement, because Wesley kind of gets buried under the storyline development, and a lot of the characters do need more. But so we got a little bit of Worf in this episode. I like Worf giving those dirty looks to the Benzite and rolling his eyes. That was hilarious for me. And I like that Klingon that played the captain who was giving a story about his father. I thought that was one of the best scenes in the episode.
Yeah, that was, let's see, the captain was played by
yeah, he had a scene.
There it is.
He had
Christopher Collins. Christopher Collins, and the second officer, Clag, he was the one whose father died. Mm-hmm. That was played by Brian Thompson, and we've mentioned Brian Thompson's name before. He is an actor we've seen he's in a few other Star Trek episodes. I'll look him up very quickly to remind myself, but I think the other guy, Christopher Collins, that may have been his only one. Did you notice he sounded a lot like JG, or the JG sounded a lot like the captain?
Yes, that I noticed. The voice was similar to JG's voice and like the Klingon voice. But as a performance-wise, I like the second in commander, the one who was below Riker. Mm-hmm. Brian, what'd you say?
Thompson. Yeah, so Thompson. He was also a Klingon in Star Trek Generations, the movie. He was also in Star Trek Deep Space Nine for 2 episodes. He was in Glatu, which I don't fully remember. That was his second season episode, Rules of Acquisition. But he was also Toman Torax as a Jem'Hadar in season 4, episode To the Death. So he's done a few things. Let me see if he did something else with the Next Generation. I think he may have. Nope, just the 1 episode. He was also in 3 episodes of Enterprise. So they've definitely used him quite a few times. Like 4 different characters in 6 different episodes or movies, things like that.
Yeah. Well, I just like the scene that he gave when he says, "My father." I thought it was a great line delivery. Riker asking about his father, and when he says, "My father," I thought it was a great delivery. And then he went on to say, you know, a Klingon is his work, not his family. And I just thought that he really gave a great Klingon performance. And I believed that he was, I guess, the most human of the Klingons that I've met in some way, because there were moments there he had compassion for Riker. There were moments when he trusted Riker over even his own captain. Even though there were moments that he distrusted him in the beginning. So I like the arc of his character. I thought it was really great. And then that last line that he had when he takes Riker, picks Riker up off of the floor from that hit he takes, he says to him, I was wrong. You do understand, a lot about Klingons, or something to that effect. And I like that delivery as well. I thought that was another great moment where he nailed
It's a good Star Trek moment. We're used to Star Trek having those moments, those character arcs, those understandings, and that was definitely one of them. I do want to point out that Christopher Collins, who played the captain, I was wrong. He actually is in other Star Trek episodes as well. He has another Next Generation episode later this season, in the second season, episode 17, The Samaritan Snare. He plays Captain Greb Ned Log. And people listening in right now go, oh boy, is that the introduction to the Pakleds? And yes, it is. So, Cirroc, 9 episodes from now, you're going to be very pleased to see him again. I think, at least I will, because I haven't seen that episode in decades, and I'll be very excited to see that episode again. But he was also in Deep Space Nine for a couple episodes. He was in season 1, The Passenger. He played a character named Durg. I don't quite remember that one. And in season 2, he played Blood Oath, or he was in Blood Oath. So he also was in 4 different episodes as 4 different characters. Good stuff there.
Yeah. And again, like, I did have thoughts of JG when I heard his voice, because he did have a very similar kind of tone in which he played the Klingon voice. Was Riker scared there for a minute when the Klingon women were on him? Because he had a look of fear when I've never seen him that scared of it in the moment. He's usually the guy who's like, yeah, I'll take it. What's going on?
I rewatched that look like 4 times, man. When he's like, when she says, okay, I'll see you later, or something like that. And he was like,
is she serious?
Yeah. The look on his face. Like, suddenly he went from like, hey, to like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to back this up now. I was just talking jive when I said 1 or 2. I didn't actually mean like he was definitely scared.
Yeah, he was scared, and that had me rolling. I was laughing. 1 or both, I was like, okay, big guy, you ready for it?
Big guy.
Worf had me laughing too, though, because he was like, I will instruct you on Enterprise etiquette. He just had these lines where he kept banging on Mr. Benzite.
Banging on Benzite.
Banging on Benzite. The Benzite said, that's not very hospital. And he said, that is not your concern.
Oh, Worf.
He kept shutting him down. Worf needs somebody to pick on in this show. That would be funny for me. Just like one character that he always picks on.
Yeah. Instead,
because he's good at it.
But he's kind of the punching bag. But you're right.
Yeah.
It'd be better if he was just like rude to one person for no reason. Just like Ensign Fart Spray or something, like, Ensign Fart Spray, I can smell you from here. You did it wrong, but you didn't even check. Do it anyway.
That's what I'm saying. Like, because everybody's doing it to him, he has to have one person that he gets to do it to. Where it's like, all right, I'm going to take out my frustrations out on you. And it felt like that's what the Benzite was. That's what it felt like he was in this episode of Worf.
I wonder if they were planning on, because right now in the second season, we're noticing there are a lot of characters that they're introducing with the plans of bringing them back, like Dr. Solar. Remember the Vulcan doctor that suddenly was just given like an episode instead of Pulaski. O'Brien suddenly is a character rather than just some guy in a couple episodes. Guinan is introduced. Pulaski's replacing Crusher. There are a couple others that clearly are being introduced to bring back. I wonder if Ensign Mendon was also introduced to be a recurring character, because he does not come back. This is it. That was the end of it. And I thought it was a good character, and he could have been that Worf whipping boy, because they didn't have that final moment where Worf goes, Ensign Mendon, well done, or so, you know what I mean? Like, usually there's that kind of moment. The Klingons did that for Riker, but he didn't have that, which leads you to think maybe he's going to be back and he's going to have to keep earning that thing. That's too bad. It would have been great.
Yeah. I don't know if you were thinking this either, but I was thinking of Dr. Muhammad Noor when they were going through the whole subatomic bacteria discovered, and it can break into nucleotides, and it's doing this, and
I'll tell you, the only thing that was going to the back of my mind was my eyes rolling back, because I can't hang with that kind of talk. Like, normally I can hang in there, but that time I think I should have thought about Muhammad, because he would have been able to explain that really perfectly for us. But they always have to throw that in for us.
I could hear him in the back of my mind saying, actually, tunneling a neutrino beam would not would not cause a significant reduction in the submicron growth. Just like some advanced stuff that is like beyond my head. But I'll tell you what, I did like the exterior shots of the bird of prey and some of the planet shots with the.
I put that in my notes as well.
And the Enterprise.
I think especially the bird of prey for me, I was like, wow, it really stood out. And I think it's because it's been remastered in HD. I believe all of the Next Generation has. Everybody in the live chat and in the comments below are listening in. Give us some more information on that. But I believe that all of TNG has been remastered. That's why every once in a while you kind of stop and go, whoa, this was 1989? This looks
That's
pretty
what I
good.
was thinking too. I was watching like, damn, the graphics are great on this. Now, it looks better than Deep Space Nine.
And the colors were sharp. Like, that bird of prey looked green, and you could see details.
Yeah,
I was like,
green,
whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah, this is my little rendition that I drew of it. But,
that's really good.
It was kind of sick. I thought, damn, that bird of prey looks nice. But then again, on the same note that I thought the bird of prey looks really advanced and super, detailed. Also, like the exterior shot of the Enterprise in front of the Starbase 179 in the background. It kind of had the planetary vibe. It was it looked beautiful. Like, it looked like something that could be visually done today. And that's because it was. And but it looked great. The thing that I did have an issue with was the firing range set that they built for Picard and Riker. I thought that was like very remedial. It looked like a hopscotch.
It was minimal.
It was too minimal. And with the kind of technology that you have at your disposal, you got the holodecks or holosuites or whatever there's on there on the stage on the ship. Like, you would think that they would come up with a better thing than that. Stand in your semicircle or whatever and shoot around. That was kind of low budget for me.
You know what I really liked again, and this is not something that I ever noticed when I was a kid, but now that I'm an adult kid, the scoring is gorgeous. I think that was Ron Jones again. There are like it was like cute, ethereal bells music going on in 2 or 3 different scenes, and it definitely takes you to a time. It definitely feels like 80s. Like, I can't imagine hearing that music nowadays. It's very time consistent with that era, but it's really good because it's interesting. It makes things seem a little peculiar, a little unsure, but it's like a feeling of wonder too when those bells are chiming quietly. I don't know. I really liked it because it's a very different take on anything I've heard, especially in science fiction. But shout out to Ron Jones for that.
Yeah, and I'm also going to do another shout out on minus to Rob Bowman because I can feel the pace and I can feel when he's directing an episode, it's just better than other people, uh, and that's because he knows how to keep the tempo up. He keeps the shots nice and fluid. The camera just is in the right spots at the right time, and shout out to Rob Bowman for really setting the bar for these first couple of seasons when it comes to directing. Because I think that there's a pace and style that he gives it that makes it less feeling of the period of the time. It has more of a tempo to it that I can watch and vibe with.
It'd be fun.
Where this episode didn't have that much action involved in it.
Not at all.
Kind of brought he brought a lot of it with just keeping that tempo up, moving the camera right. I thought the shots were done right. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say it would be fun to see somebody edit these kinds of episodes like YouTube edits. It's like cut in the middle of a sentence, cut, like that, and then trim it down to like 21 minutes, and see if that I feel like that would be pretty
you could trim it down less than that because there's not much story in these episodes. It's just how they play out. For example, I thought that one of the reasons why I prefer Lieutenant Clagg's performance over Captain Kargan is because I felt Kargan didn't act, and not that he's acting, but in the way the character was written, he didn't act in the way that I thought was believable. It was a little bit too rushing to judgment. Like literally, if you're it's like not picking up the phone and saying what the person's going to say on the phone. That guy's going to ask for some money. He's a bill collector. Like, yeah, but pick up the phone and find out. Like, you're not sure what he's going to say, and that's what I felt like he was doing with the Enterprise. Like, let's just shoot him. Like, all right, well, why don't you ask a question? Something, take a pulse of it. So that was the part of it that I didn't believe about his performance. Maybe if he was more subtle about it, maybe if he was more vindictive and played it in a different way, like he had this grudge on his shoulder and he was more like calculative about it and more thoughtful. I felt like it was impulsive and not the actions of somebody who makes it the captain. That's all.
Yeah, good point. However, it is now time for the home run of the day. Carrie Schwent made this awesome baseball, or had somebody make it. Who knows? But it's amazing.
Yeah.
Cirroc
Shout out to
Lofton,
Carrie.
who gets the home run of the episode?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if it was, it's going to be Riker. It's going to be. I'm going to have to give it to Riker. He really had me captivated this episode. I thought the scenes with him eating Klingon food, he looked really natural in it. He looked appropriate in those moments, even though I was disgusted. But I did admire his performance.
Yeah.
The looks that he gave when the girls were looking at him, I thought those were great. And also, I enjoyed his confrontation at the end with Picard. He really stood almost as an equal with Picard when he was telling him to lower your shield and surrender. There was a seriousness in the tone in which he approached it that I enjoyed. I thought, okay, this is good. So overall, I would say that Jonathan Frakes gets the home run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a great moment. That little bit of Commander versus Captain Chicken. And the captain says, you know what, I'm going to trust my commander and do what he says and surrender. I mean, that's putting a lot of faith in your commander there. And I also very quickly noticed that they made a concerted effort to build up Data's character a bit. You notice he was on the bridge, like he was in charge of the bridge several times when Picard and Riker are doing target practice, when they're doing whatever else, like he's always manning the bridge. He's a very good second officer, and they gave him a lot of time in the captain's chair. However, for me, I think the home run is going to have to be a back-to-back home run with John Putch and Michael Westmore combining to make one of my favorite aliens ever. So I got to just lean into that. John Putch did a great job of playing the same alien's brother, but slightly differently. So it was a recognizable character type, obviously looked the same. According to Wesley, not me, I could tell them apart very easily. And he was just great. And Michael Westmore obviously is a phenom, and he and his team killed it. That's the home run of the episode for me. Now let's give a very special thanks to some other great sluggers. And their names are Hitting for the Cycle, Homer Frizzell. I can't say that for everybody. Okay. Come up with something for all of them. Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman Tom, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arukin.
Arukin.
Our good pal Titus Moeller, Darlena Marie, Dr. Mohammed Noor, Tierney C. Diekman on a post, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, DQ, Neil Akasaka. Justine Norton Kurtzen, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Live from Tokyo, V. Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manosfi, Marcia Classic Schreier, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner and Jason the Outrageous Oaken. All right, everybody, stick around. We've got the free-for-all coming up next. We will be right back on The Seventh Rule. Bet your bottom dollar. Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule. This is the free-for-all, so look out. Melissa Longo is here.
Hi.
She's wearing a shirt that you can get at theintrovertedrepublic.com. Justin Weir is here. Special thanks to Justin for this entire episode. What's up, Justin, with his cool prune juice and chill shirt?
Hello, hello.
All right. Oh, we got another one. My Live from Tokyo is also here wearing a cool shirt that Melissa made. You could get it at theintrovertedrepublic.com, I bet.
Yeah.
Look, everybody,
Thanks,
Jason Oaken's here to teach us some things about directing. Cirroc mentioned some directing earlier. We'll see how that goes. Chris McGee's wearing his favorite It's a Jake shirt also. Carrie Schwent is here. She said no limericks this week, but we'll see how that goes. Allison Leach Hyde is here as well. Welcome. We've got Anil O. Palat outside of the Enterprise D, and Mr. V. Matt Boardman is here wearing his favorite Seventh Rule shirt. Oh, that you can get, everybody, at our Teespring store. So go ahead and click the link below for our Teespring store and get yourself a cool band-like Seventh Rule shirt. All right, let's get into it. Cirroc Lofton, a.k.a. Jake Sisko, guesses the IMDb score.
This is going to be a 7.8 for me. 7.8.
Does anybody else have a guess that doesn't already know?
Channeling my Susan Gruner. It's a 10. but probably not.
It's a bit of Senator Breenack, too.
A little bit, yeah.
Anybody else?
8.2.
All right. Well, Justin and Chris give you all the hints you need. It's an 8.
Yeah.
It's an 8.0 right there, everybody. 8.0. No non-appearance mentions that I caught. Did anybody catch any?
Well, I have a question, because you see this white background. Does that count as a non-appearance mention? Because
I don't know. That's interesting. What it says, Quark Popula.
Yeah.
Outside of a Klingon ship scan.
Yeah.
Well, I think no, because that's pre-Quark. Quark wasn't even invented yet.
It is pre-Quark.
What do you guys think, judges?
Homer would say no, 100%.
I know.
On the Homer scale.
I'm more easygoing, but
Yeah.
Homer would shut that down.
On the Homer
I
scale, it's
know.
4 shakes of the head.
Well,
That's a
it
good
was worth
catch,
a
though.
shot.
Also, the Klingon ship was called the Pa, which was interesting.
Yes.
That was also pre-DS9.
Mhm.
Well, look, Malissa Longo, can you get us started off on the right track? What do you think of this episode?
I enjoyed the episode. I thought it was interesting. I enjoyed the relationship building between Worf and Riker. I thought their scenes together were quite good. I also am liking Wesley more and more than I did the first season. Because he seems to have settled into the ship and his place in the crew really well. So I liked that too. I didn't enjoy seeing all of the Klingon food, although I did because I got to say ew a lot. And I wept for the octopus in one of the shots because octopuses. It's not octopi. It's octopuses.
Go for it, Justin.
Are what? Are very intelligent, so we shouldn't eat them. That's. I have more to say about this episode. Some questions and some nitpicks, but I'll leave that for things left unsaid.
I think Things Left Unsaid is going to be dominated by a conversation between octopuses and octopi, personally. I'm going to bring that back up. This is going to be fun. We're going to learn stuff. Justin Weir is here. Thank you for sponsoring this episode, Justin. You've been waiting patiently for this one to come up, and you were able to switch time around at work to get on this one. So please tell us why this is your favorite episode.
Oh man, I would have called in if I had to. I love it. I love this episode because for a while I was hanging out at a friend's house, and it was the place to go where us kids could eat sandwiches without the parents around because they had their own house, and they would always have TNG on. And I thought it was like, oh my god, this boring ass old show. I didn't know it at the time. They were watching it in order, but I remember it clear as day. This is the first episode that made me turn my head and be like, okay. That was the end moment when he goes, "This is Captain Will Riker of the Klingon vessel Rosh. I order you to lower your shields and surrender." And surrender, which is awesome. But a lot of great moments in this episode. I really think it was the first good episode of TNG. I love the Klingon cafeteria scene when they're all eating with the Klingons. The girls are just eyeballing him, and one or both, and he's laughing with them. Yeah. You know, I'm going to leave the rest for later because I just have so much on this episode. This episode is just top tier for me. Thank you.
Wow. I got to hear more, though. Just real quick, what was your very favorite moment or the very best aspect about this episode that made you love it so much?
Well, I think it's because I'm such a huge Star Trek fan, it hits home that way because it's the one I remember changing my head. Like, this show's actually pretty good. I get it's not the best episode, but it's a pretty good early TNG episode.
Mm-hmm.
Riker killed it. Riker was the man in this episode.
Also, looks like you've got a painting from Jenny R. Johnson art behind you, if I'm not mistaken. Very cool.
Beautiful.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Mai is live in Tokyo. Probably. It doesn't say it on your Zoom, but I bet you are. What do you think of this episode?
I liked it. Right at the beginning when Riker and Picard are in the phaser practice range, I just kept thinking of Pong. I wanted to hear boop, 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 you know, kind of thing. Listening to Melissa's comment, I get that same reaction from a lot of people when I describe real Japanese food, because there's a lot of raw fish, there's a lot of octopi. It can get pretty Klingonish looking sometimes, and I get that a lot. But I started thinking about what it takes to enter an entirely different culture for an extended period of time. And I've had the opportunity to live in Germany, China, Japan. The key to understanding a culture is learning the language, I think. And with the international translator, that's taken away. But aided with the understanding of languages, I've learned a lot, much more than I would have otherwise. But the other thing is to learn the cultural basics before you get there. Mendon not researching local customs and not reporting the bacteria on the ship reminded me of a Westerner getting a business card at the beginning of a meeting in Japan, putting it in his wallet and putting it in his pocket and sitting on it, which is like totally no-go over here. You put it on the table and wait until the end of the meeting, and then you all put it away together. Riker not knowing Klingon, totally normal, but needing to rely on your host speaking your language it's not the best. But I thought it was a much more honest representation of two cultures interacting without the universal translator aboard the Pach. I think the message that I get most clearly, you asked this question, Justin, I'll just say, I think the message I got most clearly here, and that's why I've got the 747 arriving in my background today, is that you have to remember that a journey is always, it's seen with two eyes. It's seen with your eyes as you're arriving and looking at them, but it's also seen with their eyes as you arrive and they're looking at you. And I think that's really where Star Trek excels with messages like that. The little bit more you have to think about it, and I like that message coming from Star Trek. So I give this message an 8 at least. This episode an 8 at least.
Very nice, excellent. Thank you very much. Jason, the outrageous Oaken is here. Everybody, welcome back. What do you think of this episode?
Well, this one is probably one of my favorites of the second season. It certainly is more of a standout, and looking at it from week to week, you can certainly see the difference. And you certainly alluded to the way it was directed, and when you have Ron Perlman filming the episode, it starts with a panning shot right away, and you get to see things moving. And a lot of the shots that he did, they start sort of on the movement, and they move on. There's a scene a little bit later in the episode where Mendon is at the science station. You can see something in the foreground. And it's not the only shot where there's something in the foreground. Then you basically get a close-up of Mendon, and then the camera pans along with him as he moves along and goes to the tactical. There's another shot where you see things from his point of view, even though Picard is speaking toward the end of the bridge and walks, I think, into the radio room, which is very unusual. You don't see that. There's also a shot going around the horseshoe. I think Rob Bowman used the same shot in the first season as well. So there's a lot of that. And when you go to the Klingon ship, there's so many low angles there, probably because they build the ceiling so you can actually show it that way. But it also magnifies the Klingons and shows them in a certain way. If I had to nitpick anything, I think Chris Collins' performance was a bit over the top. I think that's something that held me back a little bit. You
get a Cirroc point for that one right there. He caught that too.
And one thing in the mess hall, I think you probably should not have gone to the wide shot because it showed that there were like 2 or 3 tables and nothing else there. I'm not sure you should have gone sort of a wide angle on that. But overall, I think it certainly looked great to get character development. I mean, it's not so great that you don't have every series regular. In this one, 2 of them are missing, but there's certainly a focus on the Riker character and
Troy and Geordi.
Yeah, they're not in it. So, but again, the story didn't revolve around them. And one other thing I mentioned, and leave the rest for later, is of the scripts that I've looked at, this one changed the least from the version that I've read to the version that was shot. There were some dialogue changes, but overall, I think it stayed very, very sort of true to form, which makes me think they got it right the first time. So again, better script, certainly much, much better direction than last week. Make for a very entertaining episode. It certainly was not slow paced like sometimes they are, and I think the camera movement helps that a lot.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, Jason. Chris McGough is here, everybody. I don't know if you had that already. I missed it before, but what do you think of this episode?
This was a fantastic episode. I thought it's great seeing Mordoc's actor again playing Ensign Mendon, and it looks looks like he didn't do his homework before joining the Enterprise. And I thought it was interesting that because of that, it's interesting how one small oversight in protocol almost started an entire war practically.
Mm-hmm.
That little phaser range scene, first and only time we'll ever see that, unfortunately. I immediately, when I saw that again last night, I thought, they should make like a VR game out of this. Put on your Oculus Quest 2 and just start shooting around at whatever. They probably have some already like it, but obviously with the serial numbers filed off, so it's not Star Trek. Great seeing Brian Thompson playing Clag in this, which, by the way, when Riker puts Clag in his place there after being aboard the Klingon ship, Clag says, "I will take your orders." And immediately, as soon as I saw that, I couldn't help but think that, he ought to be serving me at my favorite restaurant or something. I don't know. Also, towards the end, just after Riker has facilitated the beaming of Kargan to the Enterprise, Riker says that line, "I am your captain now." And immediately, again, I thought of the good old meme. So I had to real quickly put one together and show Riker saying the same line correctly, For those of you just listening to the podcast instead of watching it, you're missing out a little bit. And of course, I'm getting all my buttons mixed up here. Anyway, I think Carrie brought up the one NAM that actually was in this episode, if it is technically a NAM, which is Mordock, even though it's the same actor and probably the same.
You're right. That's definitely a NAM. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a NAM.
So props to Carrie for catching that. I did not, strangely, but did. And finally, my memorable quote of the episode, kind of weird taken out of context, but one or both.
Well, thanks very much, Chris. Carrie Schwent, you've got kind of some gach behind you.
Yeah, gummy gach.
Yeah. What do you think of this episode?
I love this episode. The Klingon ones are always fun, and gummy gach is the only gach you will ever catch me eating. I'm far. Oh, absolutely not. Anyway, I'm like Riker. I am far too picky to attempt eating most of that. I am not that. Even though I love travel, I am not that adventurous. Riker was clearly enjoying himself, and to sort of follow up on Chris's quote, one has to wonder if Riker had stayed on the ship longer, would he have maybe hooked up with one or both of the Klingon chicks? It was very fun to see Riker being on the receiving end of all of that flirting for once. And he was both kind of enjoying it and kind of scared by it. Because the one chick was incredibly intense, but she was amusing me. Absolutely. I've got a weird deja vu thing and a couple of nitpicks, but I'll save those for later. And before I do my limerick, I will gush on Brian Thompson a little bit. I have had such a thing for him ever since I saw him on the X-Files long before I ever saw him in this episode as the alien bounty hunter. And he plays a couple fantastic characters on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but he makes such a fantastic Klingon. He's got the right voice to play a Klingon too. I'd love to have him and JG as their Klingons in the same scene together. I bet they would vibe quite well. But I do enjoy the traveling. I enjoyed Wesley's pep talk to poor Mendon in the back there when he's having his little moment of, oh shoot, I messed up. And that pep talk, Tasha definitely would have approved of that pep talk. I think it's kind of one I can imagine her a kind of pep talk she would give. But in the spirit of traveling, I present the following limerick. It can be fun to try something new, to experience things unknown to you. All kinds of new rules and lots of weird foods. The point is to learn things you never knew.
Excellent.
So,
well, thank you very much, Carrie. Enjoy your gummy gach. We've got Allison Leach Hyde up next. What's up, Allison? What did you think of this episode?
As a kid, I was always uncomfortable about this episode because I was so worried about Riker. I didn't want to watch it because I was just like, oh my God, no. You know, one of our main characters is going someplace scary. Now, as an adult, I really like the episode. So it's fun to, you know, have that experience of many years of this show and having my emotions toward it change. What's fun is this had the highest Nielsen rating of the first 2 seasons of when it came out. So this was a very well watched episode. So everyone was really excited about getting more Klingon information. So that's cool. It is our introduction to blood wine. It's our first episode with that. So that's kind of fun, according to Memory Alpha. So I'm going to take their word for it. My favorite scene is Riker in the mess hall with all the Klingons, because I find that's one of the best ways to learn a culture is to sit down and eat and just go, we're actually not that different. And so I really liked that they did that in that scene. And so that's my favorite scene, and it has my favorite line in it. And it is, they are inquisitive. They would like to know how you would endure. I'm like, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a great line. It was delivered well by that guy. So I enjoyed that. And I also really liked that they had the A and B plots mirror each other and coming from 2 different ages. You know, we have the young kids going in their fish out of water story, and then we have an adult going in his fish out of water story, and how they mirrored each other and how each of them took it differently and how they each learned from it. So I thought, as an adult, this is a great episode, really good just for watching people learn more about themselves and other cultures. So I like it much more now than I did when I was a kid.
Very good. Thank you very much, Allison Leach Hyde. Look, it's Anil O. Palat. What's up, Anil? Where are you today? And what did you think of this episode?
Actually getting ready for a flight to go to Berlin. So nice. Speaking of travel, which is why I like this episode so much. It shows how adventurous Riker is, but also how respectful he is. You know, like they put the live gah in front of him, and I like that he ate it, because sometimes you're in a weird situation like that where, you know, someone offers you something that's like they're Klingons and they're playing it for funny, but that's like a common food for them. And so for him to take it was really respectful, you know, in a way, and it kind of got him on their good side, and it opened up this experience for him, which was really great. And it put us as the audience, like, we're like kind of insiders in that, you know, we're seeing the Klingons from, you know, an insider point of view. So it was really great. And yeah, it's one of those episodes that give us more Klingons, which I always like the Klingons. One little nitpick I'll have is when Picard came to the table when Riker was having the feast, and he made this face like, whoa, that's, you know, and I'm thinking like, I don't think that matches with Picard. I think he would be much more like, oh, I've eaten that a bunch of times when I was drinking with some Klingons or something. But yeah, anyway, great episode. Really, really good episode.
Great. Thanks very much, Anil O. Palat. Look, it's the Matt Boardman, everybody. Oh, and he's got behind him the shot of the cool Klingon bird of prey that Cirroc and I were singing the praises of. What did you think of this episode?
Oh, I love this one. You know, again, it's a highlight of season 2 for me. I like that this is, I'm trying to remember, but I think this is only the second time, because we had what was it, Heart of Glory in season 1, where we got a little bit into the Klingon culture with the death yell. But this is kind of cool because it's like it's that first introduction to like expanding out the Klingon culture a little bit more. And so that's, I think that's fun. I like that. I mean, again, I think that Jonathan Frakes does a fantastic job in this one. He gets to show some acting chops. I love when he his authority is being challenged on the bridge there, and he kind of looks away, and it's a very Riker move, like where he's just kind of like, all right, here we go. And then he just, judo chops the guy to the stomach and then throws him into the panel. And then the best part is afterward, he kind of stops and he goes, but a fun fact for this episode, because this is one that I got to work on, a lot of the Klingon Bird of Prey footage that we see is reused footage from Star Trek 3. And so there was a particular piece that we needed that we were missing. And one of the fun things that I got to do was sit through and watch dailies from Star Trek 3 looking for this specific piece of footage that we needed. And I don't know, I just sat there with a permagrin that I still have the smile lines from now, because it was just being able to see this footage that was filmed a while back and what they did. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, this is such a great episode. It's I love when Star Trek takes an opportunity and examines cultures. And I love the Klingon culture. I think it's a lot of fun, and it was great to see this as the sort of the launching point for what we eventually get through some of Next Gen and then into Deep Space Nine.
Matt, you answered a question Cirroc and I had when you say you worked on the show, that you're talking about remastering it, right?
Correct.
And
yeah.
was every episode, were all 7 seasons fully remastered?
Yes.
Wow. It showed.
Yeah.
I mean, we're definitely singing the praises of how amazing it looked. So good
there
work
were a few
to you.
shots there were a few shots where we had to recreate because they could not find the footage. But most of it, was reused footage from Star Trek 3.
Wow, great. Amazing work. Thanks very much, Matt. Cirroc Lofton, any final thoughts today? What say you?
Matt, were you able, when you were rewatching this episode, were you able to find the scene where Riker is actually being breastfed?
That's in the extended cut. But the problem is that we talked about it, but then Paramount was like, no, we promised the fans that we would only do what they originally saw.
Okay, so we're not going to.
It kind of didn't pass the censors. The lawyers were like, we're going to have to nix that one.
I wonder if Vulcans pronounce that kind of censors as censors too, or only censors. I don't know. Anyway, you were saying, Cirroc?
No, what I liked about the episode was the way Riker resolved the situation. I thought it was clever for him to, use that honing device, to use the 40,000-foot radius of beaming, all of those kinds of things, and also to de-escalate the situation while still participating in the escalation of the situation. So it was very clever for him to do that, and also to honor both of the duties that he had. Like he still honored the duty that he swore on that ship, which ironically came with this whole setup of, one of the duties is to assassinate the captain if the captain is acting irrational, and he kind of fulfilled that role too in a roundabout way. And so I thought that's what was clever about this episode, was the fact that he maintained his allegiance to Starfleet. He never really gave up any strategic information. He wouldn't give them any weaknesses in Starfleet's defenses. So he kept his integrity in that way. And he also kept his integrity with the Klingons by, honoring their system of, military tactics or whatnot. So I thought that in the end, that's what made it clever for me. I have to agree with all of the points about it being really one of the better, if not the best episode that we've seen up until this point. It definitely moved well for me. I noticed the pace, and I wasn't surprised when Rob Bowman was the guy behind the camera kind of orchestrating this. A great episode for Riker. And yeah, I just thought it was a good episode. I also like seeing Klingons. They added extra flair for every episode, and there's just so much playfulness. A little bit too much from some cases, I thought, but there's so much playfulness that you can do. And also, lastly, the whole "my father" thing hit me really hard, just because it felt like that is a tone or a commonality that all of the aliens essentially have in some way, is they have parents. And so to me, that is a common theme that Riker was able to reach out and build a connection with, based on something that is similar in experience to all of us, having that a love for our father, love for our mother. And I thought using that as a way to strike commonality was a very also smart and clever thing that Star Trek was doing in this episode. So that's my final take on it.
All right, everybody, you heard it here first. All those things. Thank you to Melissa, Justin, Carrie, Chris, Jason, Mai, Allison, Anil, and Matt. For myself, Cirroc Lofton, Melissa Longo, Mr. Aaron Eisenberg, thank you all for joining us. And until next time, always remember the 7th rule.